Darwin's idea of descent with modification was built around the inferences he took from observations in the Galapagos and on his trip around South America. So here's how this works. He noticed that there's a biological unity to life. Organisms share characteristics. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, I saw that it said 8, but I was like, maybe I skipped a number. There are 8 characteristics that life shares. Now, this should be familiar because we talked about this in 101 as well, way back in the very first chapter. All organisms have an organization to them. They all reproduce. They have a metabolism. They can break things down in order to get energy. They have homeostasis. They maintain internal bodily conditions. They pass their genetic information from one generation to the next. They respond to stimuli. They grow and develop, and they adapt through evolution. You could think of this as what's the difference between you and a brick? Does a brick have cellular organization? No, but you do. Does a brick reproduce? I guess if you broke it in half, you could say that. But this is like, I don't know, doing martial arts or something. You're like, and break the brick. But that's not actual reproduction, because the smaller you get, the it'll eventually become incoherent. Metabolism. You eat things. The brick doesn't. You use those things to make energy. The brick doesn't. The brick doesn't produce energy. Ooh, unless it's a radioactive brick. But that's a different story. Homeostasis. You maintain internal bodily conditions. You have a fairly standard pH through your blood. You keep a standard body temperature, or at least warm enough to survive. The brick doesn't. It just sits there. If it's hot, the brick is hot. If it's cold, the brick is cold. Brick doesn't do anything about it, though, because it doesn't respond to stimuli. If there's a fire, which would make you have to admit, very hot, you would leave. The brick would not, which is why when we build a fireplace, we make it out of bricks and not people. And if you make it out of people, you are messed up. You can pass your information on to the next generation. It's possible. You may not have done it yet. But when you do, you win at life, not because children are sweet and wonderful and awesome, but simply because you've passed on your genes. Because kids are not sweet and wonderful and awesome, especially when they become teenagers, as I'm now experiencing. Yay. Growth and development. That's how they become teenagers. The brick does not. The brick never has offspring that grow up and become big bricks. You don't start off with a baby brick and nurture it until it becomes a big brick. Adaptation through evolution. Change. You are constrained through evolutionary processes where a brick is not. You pass on your genetic information, and then your offspring may be more or less able to reproduce than you are. The brick does not have that ability. There is this unity among all living organisms. You, plants, any animal you think of, even bacteria, we all share the same things in common. This unity of life is attributed to Luca, the last universal common ancestor. Luca happened down here, right at that branch of the 3 domains. This is some ancestor that lived in the remote past, and we're going to talk about characteristics of Luca in a lecture I give you about the beginning of life. But in the past, we all stemmed from one source. Darwin thought that the descendants of an ancestral organism, as they lived in various habitats, adapted to those habitats. They got all these modifications that let them survive there. This is a dung beetle. There's not much nutrient support on the plains, except big, gigantic, steaming piles of dung. Think about an elephant. Elephants consume a lot, and then they excrete a lot. You guys ever been in a field, like a cow pasture? Yeah? And you always have to worry about stepping in cow feces? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. So there are apparently then, I just wanted to say it again for the mic, there are two types of dairy pastures, the poop pasture and the not so poop pasture. But in the field, in the savanna where there are no constraints, you're going to end up with very, very large piles. They have to get broken down. In order to break them down, one thing that happens is the dung beetle takes the dung, rolls it into a nice little ball, takes it away, and works on using it to not just feed itself, but feed its young. So it's being spread out and then being integrated back into the ecosystem. This is an adaptation to that particular environment. Think about carnivorous plants. Carnivorous plants live in areas of low nitrogen soil. That is, they don't have the basic building blocks to build amino acids. That would be bad, because what are amino acids important for? Making what? Proteins. So you need amino acids. They don't have amino acids. They turn to the only source of amino acids they can find, insects. So they lure these insects in, they trap them, and they are able to extract that nitrogen. The environment's low in nitrogen, the plant is adapted to that. So if this is happening over a long, long time, there's going to be a very rich diversity of life. You see all sorts of things around that are weird. So Darwin had to craft this master argument. He had to convince people that natural selection was occurring, that things do change. And he didn't do it by saying, look at what I saw in the Galapagos. He did it by pointing out familiar things to these people. Selective breeding, plants, animals. Humans have been selectively breeding things for thousands of years. It's like what we do. We come into a place and we're like, we kind of like that. Okay, let's replant it and see if there's something else we like. So if we, I don't know, the cow. Did we talk about the cow last time? Oh, let me tell you about the cow. Think about, back to your dairy farm. Think about cows. Cows are stupid. They're pretty much meat on legs, right? Cows are, evolutionarily, they would not have survived on the plains. The ancestor of the cow was the aurochs. The aurochs was a lean, bull-like creature that was pretty much all muscle. Our ancestors hunted it. Humans are super scary, by the way. Not us now. Our ancestral humans, we are killing machines, but we do it in the creepiest possible fashion. Most organisms out there, so sidebar to this, you got to understand the Ice Age because it was nuts. We got our ancestors. We are distance runners. We don't have that sprint that other things have. Like a dog takes off, right? Your dog goes running. You kind of chase after it, but you can't catch it on foot. Am I correct? Yeah, I know, right? Our prey items are that way. Look at a cheetah and a gazelle. Gazelle, super fast. We're not going to catch one, right? That's the way it is. Cheetahs, though, they're really fast. They can catch gazelles, and that's what we see. But the cheetah isn't the dominant predator. We are. Because here's what we did to the gazelles. Here's what we did to the aurochs. Here we are, predator. I don't know, we got a little rock or something, because that's what we did. Hope I have enough of this. They start here. And then the gazelle starts here, and they sprint. They see this predator coming at them with a rock. We're like, got a rock. The gazelle's like, screw this, I'm out, and just runs away. Starts eating again. It's like, oh, all right, got away. Used up a lot of energy, but I got away. Meanwhile, there we are with the rock still jogging after them. Gazelle's like, oh no, they're coming. Runs again. Uses more energy. Looks back. There we are. Still chasing them with the freaking rock. We do this. We had hunting parties that would travel for days just running these prey to ground. Eventually, that gazelle is out of breath because we are built for distance. We have no hair. You may have wondered about that. All these other animals have hair. We don't. We have more sweat glands per unit area than just about any other mammal out there. Why? Heat dissipation. We're not going to overheat. That gazelle with all the fur, the only way it can dissipate heat really is through panting, just like your dog. Eventually, you always catch your dog, don't you? Because in the end, your dog overheats. Your dog gets tired. Humans are untiring killing machines, chasing it with a rock until eventually that gazelle's lying on the ground. We just walk up to it, still not tired, like, boom, dead gazelle. We eat it. That's us. That's literally how we got to the top, was because we just outlasted the other things. Persistence, right? Welcome to college. Persistence, get through it. The aurochs. The aurochs was this massive killing machine that eventually we domesticated. And we're like, we don't want to have a massive killing machine hanging out by our houses. So we didn't keep the ones that were strong. We kept the ones that were fat. We kept the ones that were docile. We selectively bred them until we ended up moving from killing machine to cow. We did that with a few things. We are crazy in that way. We're like, hey, check this out. It's one of our predators, one of the things that eats us. It's a wolf. Wolves hunt in packs. And we were all like, there's a wolf. Better kill it, but keep its puppies. Why? Puppies are cute. We kept these puppies. Soon as and we we let them grow. We fed them food. These puppies are happy. But as we know, these are acquired traits. One of these two puppies bites us. What do we do to it? We kill it and we eat it. What's left? The nice puppy, who then gives birth to two more puppies. Those puppies aren't as mean, but one of them bites us. What do? Kill it, and we keep the nicest one. And time after time after time we do this. We move these brilliant predators who hunted us in packs to being the dog that you have at your house. You have to admit that how many of you guys have a dog? Is it stupid? It's what? Both of them are really dumb because we selected for those traits. Then we got to the point with dogs, especially, we're just like, let's make them super good at herding things. There are some dogs out there that are just have this natural instinct for herding because we kept choosing traits for them. We chose the ones that were best at herding. We chose the ones that were most aggressive for guarding. We chose the ones who could like to chase down a bird because we didn't want to run after it anymore. That's artificial selection. That happens a lot. Okay, one more, plants. We did that with plants. It's a process that happens again and again and again. With plants, we have corn. What color is corn? Not trying to trick you. Yellow, right? You go to the store, because that's where we get our plants now, and you're like, corn, I would like the yellow ones. Corn's not naturally yellow. We thought it was prettier. We went that way. Corn started off as grasses. Our ancestors saw a grass that was about 2 feet tall and said, if we take the seeds from that, we can grind it down into a paste and eat it. If we cook it, we might be able to carry it with us longer. So we did that. We saved, because we're just starting agriculture, some of the seeds from the biggest plants, the plants that made the thickest seeds or the most seeds. And we planted those for the next season. We artificially selected the highest ones. So the next generation was a bit taller. We did it again and again and again. So we start off with teosinte, that becomes the progenitor corn, that becomes the corn we know now. It took us thousands of years, but now we have corn that's literally, I think it's like 2,800% larger, much more full of sugar, much, much taller, much easier to harvest. Heck, we don't even have to bend down to harvest corn anymore. We just pick. We did a lot of selective breeding. We did this with chickens, too. Darwin argued the similar process occurs in nature. Here's us in chickens, right? 1957, super thin chicken. Why? Baseline chicken. But we're selectively breeding. We're selectively looking for chickens that have more meat. 1978, quite a bit bigger. 2005, even bigger. Now, they're gigantic. You might not even recognize them as the same type of chicken. Does that make sense? It's not that, I don't know, KFC created, somebody told me, like, KFC is called KFC now because they're not real chickens. They're still real chickens. It's just selective breeding. That variation was there, and we selected for it. So here's Darwin's reasoning. He observed, 1, members of a population vary in their traits. There is variation. These are paper. Organisms aren't all the same. 2, every organism out there can produce more offspring than the environment or the ecology can handle. That is, some of them are going to die. Think about sea turtles. This guy who's like, forget the water, he's not going to make it. Some organisms will live, some will die. From that, he inferred that individuals whose traits give them a higher probability of surviving and reproducing are going to therefore lead to more offspring than others. On a white background, the white moths are going to have more offspring because the black ones are going to get eaten. So that's his first inference. Number 2, this unequal survival rate will lead to, over time, more of one type of organism than another. There will be more organisms with a favorable trait. All right, so those are Darwin's 2 big inferences from that. So he said, and so he's crafting his argument so people understand it, if artificial selection, what you guys in 1800s know happens, can occur over a short amount of time, then natural selection should be able to occur over a long period of time, many hundreds of generations. We've shown that it happens on the small scale. It can also happen on the large scale. So Darwin put forward that individuals do not evolve. You will not evolve. You, it's like the reverse Oprah. You don't evolve, and you don't evolve, and you don't evolve. Nobody evolves. But as a population, we can. As a group, we can. Natural selection can only amplify or diminish the traits that differ among organisms. That is, it relies fully on variation. If that variation exists, you can have evolution. Without variation, there's none. And that selection is always happening. However, the traits that are selected for may vary based on the situation. So those are what Darwin came up with. That is what he was worried would get him killed. So he put forward the theory of natural selection. Now, I do want to say natural selection is a theory. It is not a hypothesis. Remember, a hypothesis is a tentative explanation of a phenomenon. A theory is something that's been shown time and time and time again. You cannot prove it because no hypothesis can be proven. But it has stood up through the rigors of testing over time. That's compared to a law, which we don't really have in biology. It's a statement that will always occur under certain circumstances. It is the cornerstone of scientific discovery. Usually laws are mathematic. 1 + 1 is 2. Does that make sense? You may have remembered, you guys remember geometry when you had to do proofs and you had to remember all those laws like, the law of inverse proportions and the law, that was terrible. So laws always hold true. Theories are our absolute best explanation, and a hypothesis is a tentative explanation. Natural selection is a theory. There is a lot of evidence for it. Direct observations. We can look around and see this. We see microevolution going on. Homology. Organisms share similar characteristics. You look at the fossil record, which is something Darwin was interested in. You look at biogeography, where organisms live. direct observation is MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. It is a life-threatening bacteria that we are seeing evolve. Our relationship with drugs, antibiotics, is really interesting. We got our first antibiotics, penicillin, by looking at how fungus interact with bacteria. By the 1970s, late 1970, I kid you not, there were conferences where scientists and doctors proclaimed, we have defeated illness. We have won. We can defeat any bacteria because we have antibiotics. It was amazing. People were so excited. Yay, we're all going to live forever. Unfortunately, when they declared that, everybody stopped researching antibiotics. There were no new antibiotics on the scene. But that's okay. We were able to kill them all. Problem is, when you're killing these bacteria, there are always going to be small variations, mutations. And those are going to be acted on by natural selection. So if we're using antibiotics to kill everything, those few bacteria that are resistant are going to thrive. So in the 1950s, we got penicillin. 1970s, over time, SRS, Staphylococcus, got resistant to penicillin. So then we made methicillin, and we're like, awesome, 1970s, methicillin. The world is saved, no bacteria can survive this. Until the late 1970s, we ended up with methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus. Bacteria evolved. We saw it happen. We're like, whoa, that's not good. Don't worry, because then they turned around and said, we had this. 20 years later, we figured out how to make vancomycin, another antibiotic. And we're like, we have defeated bacteria because we don't learn our lesson. And then there was a vancomycin-resistant strain. It's starting to pop up in hospitals. Look at the time frame now, 20 years, now we're down to 7 years. We're running out of ways to kill this. It's drug resistant. It's hard to get rid of, and it's becoming more and more common. And we don't have the antibiotics to fight it anymore. Evolution's occurred. One group of organisms with variation was able to pretty much stop all of our technology. Take a look at homology. Related species have characteristics with an underlying similarity. Human arm. You'll notice that you've got this red bone, the same in humans, dogs, birds. Sorry, I was like, what is that? And it's a flipper of some kind. I'd say a dolphin. Anyways, you've got the same basic structures. Same structure, same wrist bones. It leads to credence to the idea that we come from a similar common ancestor. So you've got arms, forelegs, flippers, and so on. They've got a common theme. We do see convergent evolution. That kind of throws us off. Organisms look the same, even though they're from different lineages. We're going to talk more about convergent evolution later in the course. But here we see a shark, an ichthyosaur, and a dolphin-ish. I guess they look weird. But they all have the same basic body shape. Why? Why are they all... Yeah, they grew up in the same conditions. This is a super good shape for swimming, moving through a fluid. That's convergent evolution. The squid eye and the human eye operate exactly the same, but the eye develops entirely independently in mollusks and in mammals. That leads to analogous features. They share a similar function, but not a similar ancestry. The reptile, flying mammal, flying avian, you can see the bones are entirely different, but they have the same function. The fossil record provided a lot of evidence to Darwin, and a lot of evidence to modern scientists about how this all works. Past organisms are different from modern organisms, and many species have gone extinct. And if you look at where organisms live, where you find fossils, you're going to find that there's evidence for large changes over time in the Earth's structure. The continents are very, very slowly moving. At one point, they were joined together. If you look at South America and Africa, there are fossils in this band that are the same. That's because they were joined and these organisms could travel back and forth. Same with India and Antarctica, Australia. Biogeography leads credence to the idea that if you look at the fossils and where they're similar, over time, the Earth's land masses are moving. So because of that slow movement, species have been able to adapt and evolve on their own at their own pace. That leads to island species especially being endemic. Species that are found there and nowhere else, like kangaroos, koala, the platypus. This is Australia. Australia will kill you if you go there. It wants you dead. Platypus, super poisonous. Koala, syphilis. Kangaroo, if you've never seen a kangaroo fight, they've got these claws that will literally, if you get into like an argument, don't get into an argument with a kangaroo, but they will use their claws right along your belly, slice you open, and your intestines spill out. But they're all marsupials, and that's a group that's just disappeared on everywhere else except for the stupid possum. These island species may be related to their closely related mainlands, but they're still different, and they're related because of movement. A moose can swim, a gator can swim. You've probably blown a dandelion. Thanks, I couldn't remember what they're called. Blown a dandelion and passed the seeds a long distance. They'll travel far. So Darwin suggested that the islands were colonized by species closest to the mainland through island hopping, and those colonists gave rise to new species. This is a tardigrade. This is kind of cool. So it's all about populating from one place to another. Tardigrade is a water bear. They're teeny tiny microscopic organisms. Speaking of island hopping on the grand scale, just recently, was it Japan, I think, accidentally crashed a research vessel into the moon. Did you hear about that? Pretty sure it was Japan that crashed into the moon. The research vessel had on it tardigrades. Tardigrades have been known to survive in vacuum and in low oxygen conditions. Literally, the spaceship crashed and spilled tardigrades everywhere on the moon. We may have literally just colonized the moon with water bears. By accident. But that's an extreme example of island hopping, but it happens. Right, exactly. So Darwin and Wallace's ideas were the first step in exploring evolution. They laid a groundwork. They let people start talking about this. Then they got refined over time. Our modern idea of evolution is all about deductive reasoning and observation. It's not simply let's look at the fossils and make guesses. We're doing molecular studies. We're doing direct evolutionary experiments. And we're not simply making inferences like Darwin did. Darwin laid some of the groundwork, but man, we've come a long way, and that's what we're getting into in the next lecture.